Art is too important not to share. Welcome to the Allie and Callie Artcast.
Hi, I'm Allie.
And I'm Callie. Welcome to the Artcast.
Yes, welcome to a lot of fun.
Welcome. We're already having fun, and we just started.
That's right.
That's the way it is.
We had fun last night, too.
We did. We went and saw,
November Gold.
That's right, at the Jack Center. I call it the Jack Center. I know it's the Jacqueline Center.
It's the Jacqueline Arts and Cultural Center.
I know, but that's why I call it the Jack Center.
I know, it's so much easier.
It's the JACC. Anyway, it was presented by the Jean E. Holmberg Charitable Trust Fund, and we got to see our friends that
Matt Goodrich,
the piano, who's
like
always fabulous, and we'll have to see him in the spring. He's putting on another concerto performance with Latin music in Sandpoint, so we'll have to make sure we check that out in the spring. Something to look forward to. And my good friend Amy DeRozzi was lovely, and then Landon Toth, who has the most amazing, beautiful tenor.
He sang Caruso, which is one of my favorite. You usually hear Andre Bocelli sing. Yeah. If I had shut my eyes, I could have imagined that it was him.
I know. It was
beautiful.
I had never heard him sing opera, anything classical. I've only worked with him doing kind of musical theater stuff. So it was so amazing. I mean, he's a pretty young guy. Beautiful. Yeah. He handled it perfectly. He did, I'm going to butcher the name, Nessun Dorma from Turandot. That was my personal favorite. And of course, I wanted to sing it right now, but I can't remember the tune. But it's that one. It's so beautiful, and everyone would know it. It's like an opera tune. It's very famous. People look it up. It's spelled Nessun Dorma from Turandot, and it's beautiful. And he did such a beautiful job. And then there were two other performers I didn't really know and I've never seen before: Caitlin Wallinger and Tyler Wallinger. And they also are opera's classical trained singers, and they did a great job. Yeah. And Lorna put this together, and our old friend Holiday was there, and
Susie Snideker.
Yes.
And Carol Stacy.
Yes. So it was a great night, and it was free.
It was free because the Jean Holmberg Charitable Trust is now putting on performances from time to time. They have a little chunk of money that they are able to do free performances for the community, which is what Jean Holmberg wanted.
Yeah, so it was lovely. And you know what else I loved about it? It started at 7 and it was done by 8:30.
Yeah, that was great. I know.
As we get older,
my husband in particular was very happy to be leaving at 8:30.
I know. It was lovely.
But it was perfect. The timing was perfect.
It was. So I'm really grateful that they have that trust and that they're providing more entertainment for the community, and it was a full house. So next time it happens, you don't even have to get tickets, just show up and be there and enjoy the music. So thanks for a wonderful evening, everyone. It was very nice.
It was very nice.
Anything else new?
Well, yeah. Do you like poetry?
I do like poetry.
Do you?
Yes, I love poetry.
I love poetry. My mom and I used to recite poetry when I was a little girl, and she instilled a love of it. I don't write poetry.
I wrote haikus.
Did you?
In high school.
I'm not that smart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I know you don't always have to rhyme poems, but I always wanted to. It never seemed right.
Right.
It wasn't rhymed. But I picked one out.
Okay, I want to hear it. Yes,
it's
I do.
called Risk.
I'm ready.
And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.
Oh. Do you know who wrote that?
Anais Nin. I'm not sure I'm saying her name
Anais?
right.
Anais?
Anais Nin.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't remember the poems that I loved in college because it was so long ago. I'll read this one.
Okay.
It's by John Hay. and it's called Shine Just Where You Are. I'm going to try not to cry. You know how I am.
I know.
Okay, here we go. Don't waste your time in longing for bright, impossible things. Don't sit supinely yearning for the swiftness of wings. Don't spurn to be a rushlight because you are not a star, but brighten some bit of darkness by shining just where you are. There is a need of the tiniest candle as well as the garish sun. The humblest deed is ennobled when it's worthily done. You may never be called to brighten the darkest regions afar, so fill the day your mission by shining just where you are.
Oh, I love that.
I know. That's sweet.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I'm very emotional, but I love the poetry. Let's do beautiful poems today.
Okay.
And why are we talking about poems today?
Well, because, it's really quite an art to create a poem.
True.
And we have two people in our studio today.
So excited.
Jennifer Passaro and Stacey Boe Miller, who are both poet laureates. Jennifer was just inducted as a poet laureate at the Mayor's Awards in the Arts in October. And Stacey's been a poet laureate for a period of time from Moscow. And my understanding is you're the only poet laureates in the state of Idaho.
That's correct.
Yeah. So welcome. Thank
Welcome.
you so much for being here.
I have a terrible fact, though, that you might want to kick me out of the room, but I'm not the poet laureate anymore. I just finished the 3-year term.
Okay.
So I was a poet laureate from Moscow for 3 years, but it just ended.
You were
My
the
reign is
over.
over.
The reign is over.
But the poetry continues.
Oh, well, that's
the
all right.
reign is over could almost be the beginning of a poem.
It is.
Don't steal it.
Okay.
Okay, I won't. You're pretty safe.
You're safe with Allie and Callie. Well, welcome so much. We're so excited to hear what it's like to be a poet, what your journey is. How did this all start? Let's start with you, Jennifer.
Okay. Well, gosh, shall we go to the beginning?
Yes,
Sure.
That's a good place.
I loved the poems that you both shared, and I could tell when you were reading them that you had that feeling, right? There's like that catch, and it's almost where time sort of shifts. And I remember the first time that happened to me. I was sitting in 10th grade English class in high school in Eagle, Idaho, and my teacher, Mr. Dempsey, he read this poem. He put it up on a projector onto the screen, and it was called Eating Together by Lee Young Lee. And I just remember time stopped, right? And that I wanted to be there. I wanted to exist in those spaces where those poems were coming from. And so I started carrying Lee Young Lee's books around with me everywhere and started writing my own poetry. And Mr. Dempsey had been a student of Robert Wrigley's at the University of Idaho, and Robert Wrigley had been a student of Richard Hugo at the University of Montana. And that's where Mr. Dempsey encouraged me to apply. My grandfather had given me this book called Travels with Charlie by John Steinbeck. And there's a section in it where he's talking about all of the states as he's traveling across the country. And he says, for other states I have admiration and even some respect, but for Montana it is love, and it is hard to analyze love when you're in it. And so I went to the university and I toured it, and there above the bookstore was that saying, and I was like, I'm going here.
Chill.
That's perfect.
I love that.
And the creative writing program really took off under Richard Hugo's helm. And then it's just been kind of flooded by all of these really beautiful and powerful writers. And I just felt honored to study there and be in community there. And I think that's informed my writing since then. I've always kind of been seeking that community.
How about you, Stacy?
There's evidence in my 9-year-old journal, when I was a 9-year-old, that I was writing poetry. I wrote a lot of very rhymey poems about my dog and my sister and my brother. I've always written poetry. My dad picked up on that and would pick up books of poetry, like anthologies, at used bookstores and would have me read them out loud to him. And so I feel like I began to internalize sort of that cadence. And one of my earliest memories of being really affected by a poem, I loved hearing you, Jennifer, talk about that Lee Young Lee poem. I I shared a room with my sister who was 6 years older than I am, and I found When We Two Parted by Lord Byron on her desk, and it's like incredibly dramatic. I was in 4th grade, and it's like when we two parted in silence and tears, and all about how no one knew they were together, and so when this other person dies, no one could know the grief. And I loved it so much that I stole it and memorized it and folded it up and kept it in my jewelry box, which is just a funny, I thought I was being subversive, I guess, by stealing it, and still remember that poem to this day. But I only had sort of the knowledge of kind of classical poetry with like a lot of rhyming schemes and more ballads. And in my undergrad at Black Hills State University, took a modern poetry class and really enjoyed it, but didn't know what I was doing. And I remember my professor, Vincent King, saying to me in the hallway, "I'm interested in what you were doing." And I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing." But he met with me every week for the rest of the semester and worked on poems. And then I have just always sort of written for fun, but at around age 38, went to grad school in the program. So when I moved to Moscow, someone asked what I was into, and I said poetry, and they handed me Robert Wrigley's book. So that was a fun connection there. And they said, "He's a professor at this university at their MFA program." And I thought, well, I would love to do something like that. So I went to grad school in my late 30s, finished when I was about 41. And so I think that I've always written poetry, but those 3 years of just like focused concentration on something gave me some of the craft and skill that made me feel like I could put together the poems that were in my head that before I hadn't been able to maybe translate to paper.
So do you have poems published?
I have a lot of poems published, but not a book published. So I have what was my thesis became a manuscript that has been a finalist for publication 4 times, but never seen the light of the world. So it's a book in my computer, but I have probably over 50 individual poems published. And then I have a second manuscript I've finished that's currently a finalist somewhere, and I was supposed to find out in October, and I've just checked my email about 47,000 times in the last couple of weeks, but no word yet.
No word yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's really cool that your instructor took that time with you. But I'm really intrigued by modern poetry. That's kind of a concept I've never thought of before. And the way that you talk about it, yes, the poems that my mother and I recited were old William Wordsworth poems primarily. And I guess I hadn't really thought of modern poetry.
Right. The structure's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I understood the tools of those classic poems, which were like a certain number of meters per line, a certain rhyme scheme, and I did not know what tools the poems that were working without those had in them. And so that concentrated time, whether you do a graduate program or not, you can learn through a lot of books, including Richard Hugo's books. But I think I learned there, these are the other tools in a poet's toolbox that you can use to create a poem. And
That's so interesting. I feel like I came at it from the opposite way of like from the beginning, the modern poem, where stuff is kind of messy and all over, and then had to sit through English Lit 1 where you have to, you learn all the patterns. And I don't know, it just makes me think of Richard Hugo. Part of like what he always was telling poets was to listen to the music of it and to follow the sound. And I think that's what a lot of modern poetry does. You're tuning your ear to the page, which is, I don't know if it's not too much to say, it's tuning your heart, right?
Well, when you're setting out to write a poem, which I imagine you, as a poet laureate, your task is to perform something. And so how do you start?
I mean, it depends on if it's a prompt like that. So as Poet Laureate, I sat in our Chamber of Commerce at an art night with an old typewriter, and people would come and tell me for 5 minutes their story, and then I would take about 15 minutes and write a poem. So in that way, I would start with this story. But just in my everyday, if something, I find that the things that I am trying to make sense of in my life, which are often the most painful things. I had a friend tell me recently I'm the happiest person she knows that writes the saddest poetry. But for me, it ends up being sort of an exploration that I dive into not knowing where it's going. And so sometimes for me, it just starts with a question or pain, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah. But also it
I
can be a
love that.
sound or music or a line you think of or hear. And they can start a million ways. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I love that. I love that description. My current writing mentor, she always says, like, you want to find where there's heat on the page. That's where there's something that needs to come out. Her name is Sarah Santiles. She's a writer in Central Idaho, and she offers these great online writing classes, which, I don't know, it just makes me think about like the community of writers, right? And how we are making community of writers in this modern era of Zoom. It's different, right? Where there's community here in Coeur d'Alene of writers, but also you can connect in so many other ways too.
So you're a poet laureate now, and you're outgoing. It sounds like it's probably pretty normal to be a 3-year term.
I recommended Moscow move to 2 years because I think it's a hard commitment for people to make. You can maybe forecast what your life looks like in 2. It's a little bit harder in 3. And just because I think that's a long commitment and you can lose a bit of oomph at the end.
Right.
Not that I lost any oomph, Moscow, but just hypothetically, someone could lose a little oomph.
Right. The Ovation Company, in partnership with the Chalkboard Agency, is committed to improving the climate and culture of our schools. The number one indicator for student success is connectedness, feeling like you are part of something. Nothing helps connect people like a good story. After all, isn't a podcast a way to share and collect stories? The Chalkboard Agency's mission is to connect the world of education through the stories that bond us all. To find out more, visit thechalkboardagency.com. And if you have a story to tell that you believe would help young people to be kinder to one another, reach out to the Chalkboard Agency and let us connect you to the world.
Add a little flair to your special events with Scraps Barbecue, a great catering choice for your next gathering. Specializing in golf tournaments, sporting events, weddings, and other family friend gatherings, their commercial kitchen can be on site, or you can choose to have a fully catered meal delivered right to you. Known for their authentic Santa Maria-style tri-tip and tequila lime fish tacos, they can customize the menu to meet your needs for groups of 20 to 2,500. Contact Kevin at kevin@scrapsbarbecue.com or check them out on Facebook. So let's go to what a poet laureate is.
Well, I'm just learning, so I would love
And maybe
to hear
we'll have
what-
really different ideas.
Let's get two perspectives of what a poet laureate is. I personally, let me just tell you what I think it is. No,
Okay.
I can't, I'm kidding.
We're going to buzz you. Everything you say that's wrong.
I actually didn't know there was a position. And the first time I ever remember even hearing of one, and apparently they've been around a long time, was at Biden's inauguration. And it was that beautiful Amanda, I don't remember her last name, and she was young and beautiful and so eloquent, and it brought tears to my eyes. I love that Coeur d'Alene said, we need this.
Yes.
Thank you, Coeur d'Alene, whoever decided that was a good idea.
The Wonderful Arts Commission.
That's
I think
what
they
it was.
really
Thank
pushed
you.
it.
I couldn't remember who did it, but good.
And then City Council went along with it.
Yay.
So I think I applied for the position thinking that a poet laureate's job was to foster a conversation through poetry with the community, to host workshops and to really bring poetry into places where it's not usually found, especially with folks who are maybe struggling or have some vulnerabilities or maybe overlooked or don't have the opportunity to step into the art world as easily as some of us do. But I've also, in these past few months, learned that it is also a lot about ceremony. Like you get to step into those ceremonies and help make meaning there and help hold space for those important moments in our community. So I'm really excited for that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought of it very similarly in that it's bringing poetry into a place where it wouldn't normally be expected or thought of or maybe even welcomed. Not that it was unwelcome, but I've gotten to read poems just at city council meetings or the mayor's state of the city. And I think those spaces where you're giving actual time and attention to art, where art wasn't usually, is just a reminder to us as community members that that's a valuable thing. I think especially when a city infrastructure is so made of like, what are the outcomes and data and money and numbers? Yeah. I told this story when Jennifer was inaugurated, that when I told someone I was going to grad school for poetry, they said, "Oh, so you're going to be a bartender?" And they meant it derogatory. And first of all, I was like, that would be kick ass to be a poet bartender. You would write the best poems.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But also this fallacy that the only things worth putting time and effort and money into are things that produce
money,
something kind of capitalistically. And so I think it's a good reminder for cities and for communities that art is meaningful and lasting and shapes the spaces we live in. And so bringing it into those spaces, I think, is having an appointed position set aside for just that creates a community that people want to live in.
Yes, I agree. And going back to your thought about that, there's that moment that you feel it, that you're, I think keeping anybody, but in particular people who are running a community, to continue to feel, I'd like to see more of that.
Yes, and just the power of words, and words put together well. And who knows, it might inspire you to go, you know what, I like that. I should read some more poetry.
My father actually won my mother's hand in marriage. He used to read Chaucer to her, which I think is
pretty sweet.
In the Old English tongue, which I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall listening to that.
It's like, I don't know what that means, but I'll marry you.
Sounds good. I think. Yeah. No, that's great. I would love to hear maybe one or two of any of your poems.
I have one ready. So
okay.
When I wrote for our community at the chamber, I ended up probably writing maybe 10 or 15 poems that night. And I was exhausted because it was like typing out these for 15 minutes, these people's poems. But it was such a beautiful glimpse into our community. And so they would tell me a little bit about their life. And it was funny, this typewriter didn't have a backspace. So they also sometimes had like a $sign or something in there that I didn't mean to include. But
that's fun.
This is for Moscow community member Ashley, who I've never seen again. But this is called Digging Irises at the Center of Everything. In the preschool where I work, little lives line up to stare at a row of onions on the windowsill. Each new leaf a tiny miracle. Each sprout possibility and more. A song that hasn't ended yet. Like a seed you might think is a hard sealed box, but inside a swirling new world. Last week I dug up 400 iris bulbs. I'm making way for the new. I handed them out to families at the preschool. I imagined flowers reaching their long arms up in yards all over town. I lie in bed and send my words through the night air to them. Don't be nervous, I say. Just do your best.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
I bet she loved it too.
I made a few people cry, and I always feel like,
I did my
as a
job.
poet, I'm like, all right, that was a pretty good poem. You walk away crying. Not that I meant to.
I know, but you're welcome.
You're welcome.
That's just so brilliant.
I love it.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah.
As I've been thinking a lot of, I worked as a reporter here in Coeur d'Alene a couple of years ago, and I've been thinking about the relationship between that and being the Poet Laureate. And I like that. I mean, you're searching for people's stories. Like, I might have to steal that.
Yeah. It was really rewarding, and just a reminder that everyone has a story or something they're holding, something they're letting go of. It was a really beautiful experience.
I brought a poem that I published this year on a little press that's called Optwest Magazine. It's based in Los Angeles. So with winter coming, I thought it might be appropriate. Winter solstice at Waldport. I was born in a wound. The doctor cut my hairline. He cut my mother's abdomen between my left eye and my left ear. My blood and my mother's blood collaborating in the air where we opened and cried. Today, the sea swelled, swallowing the beach. We couldn't continue. The sea swelled, we paused and found a ray, purple and eaten. We counted its cartilage ribs, hung white as bones. We had to walk over rocks. I held your hand. It was simple to guide you. You wanted to go. In your dreams, your mother is menstruating again. that makes all of us so unbearably young. All week we think you are dying. I can see it in my father's face. All week we think everything is meaning. The doctor says, but that is not the right question to ask. At some point, the rocks ease back to beach. You let go of my hand. The sun is so splendid, we squint back into ourselves.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Oh.
Greetings, listeners of the Allie and Callie Artcast podcasts. This is Jason from Tubbs Coffee Roasters. Keeping art alive and culture relevant is the heart and soul of our community of creatives. And as a local coffee roaster who loves a good origin story of a painter or a farmer or a musician, we proudly support the Allie and Callie's Artcast podcast's expansion and exploration through positive conversation. So grab a cup of coffee, preferably one from Tubbs Coffee Roasters, and tune in, humans. Your ears will thank you.
For all your screen printing needs, trust the local you can count on. Pyramid Printing has been a Coeur d'Alene favorite for over 2 decades.
Specializing in screen printing, embroidery, signs, banners, and stickers. For all jobs, big and small, just give Eric a call.
Email us at info@pyramidprintingcda.com or give us a call at 208-664-0254.
PyramidPrintingCDA.com. We all love the fact that we've got the new Poet Laureate and the old.
Or no, more.
I'm super old.
You're like,
I am.
More experienced Poet Laureate.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Proud of these years.
I know. It's really fun to see Jennifer kind of looking to Stacy for a little, maybe a little guidance.
Or just appreciation of someone who's doing the job or has done the job.
Mm-hmm.
And now, Jennifer, will you have a 3-year term?
Yes.
Okay. That's and how did you get this job? How does one get a job like this?
Actually, I was at the Emerge block party, and we had the poetry in the basement, and Jennifer Drake was down there, and she said, hey, there's a Poet Laureateship opening up. And so I just remember like telling everyone I could, encouraging people to apply. And so it was just this, you just had to write like a cover letter and a resume, and then submit some poems. And so I think the Arts Commission had a Poet Laureate group, and I think that small group voted amongst the applications, and then they submitted it to the greater commission or the greater council, and then the city council. But I don't know too much about the inner workings of that decision process.
I kind of do because I was on the commission for a while.
Oh, great.
So the committee evaluates, and then they bring it to the entire commission, and they vote, and then and then just the way you said it, it goes to the city council for approval. It's a process for sure. Oftentimes the committee is made up of people in the community. It's not just people on the commission who are making the decisions, which is really cool because you're not getting this select group of people. You're getting a broader view from the community of who they would like to have represent them.
And I think Coeur d'Alene had also opened it up not just to poets, but also to singer-songwriters. I think
Well, it's funny. I was thinking of that when you were talking, Stacy, about writing, and you were talking about sadness, because we had Kathy Colton, who's a well-known singer-songwriter in our community, talking about the same thing. She's a relatively happy person, but she even said, I think, that when you're writing songs, the ones that are sad are the ones that usually make it. So is the process similar in Moscow?
Yes, it was very similar, but we have so I also had to submit an application with a resume, cover letter, and poems. And I had been I've always taught classes in Moscow to like local schools. I go in usually once or twice a year and teach poetry workshops, and was doing some smaller things. But when I saw this, I thought, having the support of the Arts Council with a few more resources, and then maybe reaching people who I hadn't reached before, those were sort of my motives for applying. And then we have a smaller Arts Council, so there might be committees, but I think just the whole Arts Council checks you out and then proposes it to the city council. Right. And we're kind of a small town, so some of those people already knew knew I was doing some poetry
Right.
work in town. And I was the third Poet Laureate in Moscow.
Oh.
And so I had actually been at the inauguration of the very first one, who's Tiffany Midge. She's a poet in Moscow and a really talented poet as well. And so I knew about it from that before.
So is there someone after you?
They are opening the role in January for applications, and the new Poet Laureate will start next fall. So if anyone in Moscow is listening,
They can apply.
please apply.
Right.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what do you see yourself doing as the Poet Laureate of Coeur d'Alene?
Well, we have a couple things planned so far. I'm going to be doing a workshop in February at the Music Conservatory of Coeur d'Alene, right downtown.
great.
It'll be open to everyone, but most encouraging musicians to come. And we're going to write poetry from songs, from pieces of music.
Oh, wow. That'll be
Nice.
cool.
Ooh, I like that.
I know. Everything we're talking about is giving me chills. This
I
is
know.
weird.
It's
You
good.
cry, I get chills.
You get chills. I do cry. Well, I love the fact that I'm going back to Stacy and with the community. It's kind of like slam poetry. I mean, it's to bring it up. It's not slam poetry, but the fact that you do it right there, that would give me heartburn.
And not everyone has to do that. That was
Okay.
just the
That
nice
was
thing
just
about each new Poet Laureate, and just watching Jennifer at the beginning of her reign, as we'll call it.
Yeah.
Is that everyone, in the similar way that every poet writes very different poetry based on their experience and like the hoard of words and images they hold in their brain, I think similarly each new Poet Laureate can bring their own gifts and ideas. So I probably did things differently than the first two, and that's I wanted to do that experience where it's like, I'm going to try to write all these people from the community poems in these 15 to 20 minute slots, but not everyone does that.
Right.
Right.
What would have been great is if Moscow would have taken those poems and put them in a little pamphlet.
Yes, actually, so I'm doing it again this April, and not as a Poet Laureate, but just as
yeah.
resident area
Yes.
poet. I've talked with the Moscow Chamber, and we're going to try to put together, it's called a chapbook, which is like a smaller book of poems.
I think that would
Because
be
I think
great.
it is a beautiful snapshot of a community.
I do. I think that is. It's just. I think it's brilliant. I think I love the idea that they could watch you create it, and then it would be in print.
Yeah,
and it'd
some
be
of
a
those
little
people
bit
have
of
kept in touch with me who I'd never
Yeah.
met, and
that's cool.
Yeah, and I taught other workshops similar to Jennifer where people came and I didn't write the poems. We wrote together, and one had like the youngest person was 13 and the oldest person was 77. So just where do you get that kind of experience in a community? And that's what makes me excited for Coeur d'Alene to have people of all walks of life and ages coming together
to create.
Yeah, to create art. That's a really unique
awesome
experience.
Yeah, I love that.
And just out of curiosity, do you get a stipend for this? So this is like a paid...
Millions and millions.
I know. Wait, I'm sorry, but I understand that you're part of the art, so that doesn't happen.
I was like, I'm applying. So there's a girl from Nantucket, right?
You're hired. If you just cry during it,
I'll just cry every time I read a poem. No,
you do get a small stipend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like an annual stipend.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
nice.
I always try to buy a few books as sort of like a tithe, a non-religious tithe of my stipend to give to like a school that I was visiting or something.
Oh, that's cool.
And we have a local bookstore, so then I was like just kind of trying to keep those seeds planted.
Yeah.
I see Jennifer over here making mental notes, getting ideas from your experience. That's great. Well, I would love to hear one more poem from each of you before we wrap it up. Is that okay?
I brought the one that I read for the Mayor's Award.
That's
one
great.
I
I
love
love that one.
That was
Okay.
great.
Okay, it's called Early October. This illuminated day, illuminated leaf you choose from the pile, a scattering of light green and dark, corn yellow, lantern, blood red, but this golden one, summer sun and winter candle held in your hand. Elliptic as the curve of the lake touching the sand. The season has sung the beach back quiet. Only chickadees toddle, trying all the forgotten berries. A flicker stills in a snag and then drops. Old swoop, cloud heavy, its white pressed back, something other. All the draws I've walked alone, lit by this overwintering bird. and the friend that taught me to sing them. A city can be a friend. Its peripheries endure us. The sun slides across the half surface of each thing, begging for bounce. Sometimes I see this thin old woman walking on Government Way. Some days she is all sadness, a crumpled glove, but yesterday she strolled, a biscuit in her hand, the sun washing her face, her gray hair holding every warmth, the entire city her home. We return, my son and I, to the leaves piled in their little gully, damp divide, sidewalk, cut grass. We pocket the most perfect. These will be sun catchers in the window when the dark comes. These will be illuminated, the way you say the word, so many small syllables rounding in your toddler mouth, our home catching.
Oh, that was
You're a beautiful
beautiful.
poet.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, I pulled up also the one that I read at the Art Award. Meadowlark. What magic does a teenage boy use to arrange his lips into perfect birdsong? My brother, the only person who could recreate the sweet trill we listened for each spring. This bird in the waving grass carrying my childhood in a rise and fall of songs I don't even know how to whistle. How does a pasture of trees, a pond of bluegill, a whole train track fit in a brief feathered body? My father carried songs in him and rolled them out for me on long drives, old ballads that made me know something other kids my age didn't know. I still carry them around with me, whisper them in my children's rooms at night. A meadowlark tattooed on my arm so I can't change my mind about what I love. I lay still for the pain and let that bird become part of me. I would like to be a bird, but without forgetting my father, or how walking through a field my brother put his hand out to stop me, said listen, and we waited, watching each other's face for the music.
Yeah. Got me. You.
wow.
My work is done.
Crying.
Right?
Mic drop. Boom. Yeah, very good. Oh,
I'm so impressed with the way that you guys put your words together. It's beautiful and it's moving.
It is. Are you ever nervous speaking your own words, saying your own poems out loud? Are you comfortable?
No, I'm nervous every time.
Nervous
as it should be.
Are
Right?
you nervous now?
Yeah, I was so nervous coming here. I was like, it's going to be okay. It reminded me of like cross country in high school. You know, like every time you step up to the line, you're nervous. And if you're not nervous, you're not doing it right. You know, because something's at stake. Like,
Yeah.
You're
Well,
putting
it's
part
yours.
of yourself
It's
out there.
it's yours. So
Yeah.
I get a little bit nervous, but I remember the first time I read a poem in public. I was in grad school, and it was Jim Dine art installation at WSU, and we wrote ekphrastic poems, which are poems in response to art, and one of my poems had gotten into the display. I might not have been in grad school. I don't remember, but I was in a poetry class, but I had to stop in the middle because I was like shaking so hard, and I just stopped and said, I'm shaking. And then kept reading. I don't feel that way anymore.
Right.
I feel the kind of nervous you always feel when you do public speaking or something, but I feel so much joy. I work a very corporate job, which I like and am so grateful for, but these kind of spaces, whether they come with a little bit of nerves or not, have just become so precious to me. It's the place I feel the most myself, the place where I put my most honest self. I mean, that's my story. That's really my brother in that poem, and really my dad, and really the meadowlarks of my property. And not every poet is autobiographical. I can't seem to help it. But for me, even just reading at the Mayor's Art Awards, I'm just so glad when I get to engage in that way. And the nerves have gotten a lot less over the years. So,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I'm the old poet, if you
Yeah,
know.
that's right. All right. Her reign is over.
Yes.
Yeah, it's over. They're like, you're not nervous anymore. Your reign is over.
been,
Wrap it up.
That's me. I'm the old typewriter. I don't get
And
nervous
we'll
anymore.
talk to Jennifer in 3 years.
And she'll be like,
she'll be like, ah, it was
She's gonna light her cigarette. And goes, I remember when I was nervous. It's no big deal. Yeah, that's hilarious.
So what's next for you guys?
I have, now that I've finished my reign of millions of dollars of being Poet Laureate, I'm still continuing to write. I'm actually working on a memoir, which does make me nervous. And I've had a couple nonfiction essays that have come out that have made me, if I had to read them in a room, I hate to even say it because then people might look it up and that does make me nervous. I had an essay published about dating after divorce. And if I thought of reading that in front of a room full of people, I probably wouldn't want to.
What about your essay about the community garden?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, see, I put that one on my website, but I didn't put the other one on. So I'm working on a really big book project, which is very hard for a poet. I'm struggling, but I'm like quite a few pages and words in. And then I have a podcast coming out on December 6th.
That's right.
The Workwhile podcast. You can find the trailer on any place you listen now. And then, just this podcast really sums up, I spend a lot of time trying to fit creativity, and I think a lot of people do, into the cracks of their lives that aren't working, raising children, mowing your lawn, all those things. I'll just continue, we call it the slog. I'll continue slogging away at fitting the joyful creativity in among all the other stuff that we just have to do to be human.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about you, Jennifer?
Oh, I love that, though, the slog.
The slog. I know. Gotta do the slog.
Using that word.
I know.
Well, like and follow the Workwhile podcast. You'll get to hear
That's
the
right.
slog
Like
notes.
and follow.
That's
Right.
The slog notes.
I'm really looking forward to engaging with as many people in our community as I can. Can I make like a little plug? Like for people to-
I've been just shamelessly plugging my stuff, Jennifer.
But I'd love for anyone who has an idea or like wants to provide like a space to host an event or a workshop to reach out. So you can always email me. It's Jennifer, JENNIFER .Passaro, PASSARO @gmail.com. And I think you can find me on the city website too.
And I have a website that has all that information too. Go to StaceyBoeMiller.com. You can find it there too. That might be easier to remember.
She said like and subscribe and follow.
Which reminds us, please like and subscribe to the Allie and Callie Artcast.
.com. Well, this was so great.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
coming. Thank you for coming up. And
Yeah. And sharing your
I'm
poetry.
really excited to see
Yeah,
what you're
so
going to be
exciting.
doing. I love just listening to your words.
Thank you.
And
you both.
get that book out.
I'll let you know.
Okay. And we'll promote
It'll
it.
happen.
And the little pamphlet from Moscow.
Moscow.
I have to say it right every time. How long
I'll correct you.
I know. I've been in Idaho for a very long time, and I always say it wrong.
I mean, we can't spell Coeur d'Alene. So.
There you go.
I still have to write it out.
As my husband would say,
CDA.
fair trade.
Yes.
Fair trade. Well, thank you again.
Thank
you so
This
much.
was really fun.
Yes.
And I'm Allie.
And I'm Callie, and whatever you do today, make sure it's creative. Maybe write a poem.
Yeah.
A haiku, 575.
The Allie and Callie Artcast is sponsored in part by Tubbs Coffee Roasters, globally sourced, locally roasted coffee. Scraps Barbecue, a locally owned catering company. The Ovation Company, standing for what is right and good. And Pyramid Printing, a Coeur d'Alene favorite for over 2 decades.